If you work in any sort of creative space, such as writing, art, or game design, you're very familiar with creative block, the thing that makes all of your productivity cease to a halt and it seems like your work has nowhere it's really going. But where does that feeling come from? And what can you do to help prevent it and overcome it? Let's take a look. Hi, I'm Ryan, lead designer of Ethereal here at Fineground Cryptids, and today we're going to talk about momentum, creative block, and resistance. Now, before we jump into today's video, please make sure to check out the description below, where we have a link to our Twitch channel in which we do weekly Twitch streams of our development of our game. Now, let's jump into today's video. First, let me say that everything you see in this video is not the only way to overcome your issues with creative block or even with momentum. These are just the tips and tricks that I find very useful to myself. I've written 6 unpublished books in my life, each about 300 pages each, and I wrote those in about a 2.5-year span. I did that by keeping my momentum and not allowing creative block to get in my way. So I made sure that the tips in this video kind of lean towards that. And these are the tips and tricks that we even use on Ethereal to ensure that our momentum continues as we develop the game. The reason why this opening slide speaks to momentum is because creative block, burnout, and momentum all share very similar qualities. In fact, you could even argue that they are all the same. Where does this sense, though, of losing your momentum and getting that creative block come from? Well, it can't be coming from anyone else. It's coming from you. Unfortunately, it's a fact that you are a self-saboteur, and that isn't on you alone. Many people are. Your brain wants to create excuses to not get it done. It wants to go more the easy route. It creates self-doubt, imposter syndrome, making you question yourself. In fact, a lot of creative block, I find, is just something known as resistance. Your mind finding ways not to proceed, because that is the easier way and it takes less energy. Overcoming resistance is not easy, but it's something that anybody can do when you have the right tools. It's all about creating patterns for yourself, tricking your mind almost into wanting to work on something and creating new habits. These first 2 points here are what helped me write and even today work on Ethereal on a daily basis. First of all, whenever you have the free time, you force yourself to work on the project. You set a very minor goal, which will likely lead to a larger amount of work being done. For example, when I was writing, I would say I'm going to write only 50 words today. 50 words is nothing. It's very easy to do. So I sit down, I start writing those 50 words. And next thing you know, I have 75 words, 100 words, 125 words. And next thing you know, I've written 2 or 3 chapters within a span of a couple of hours. It turned a very small goal into a large completion. And even better yet, if you write those 50 words and you run out of time, you still feel accomplished because you still got your goal done. Another very easy way to create these patterns and to make yourself work on your project is seeing what's ahead. Having the unknown in front of you makes it very difficult to want to work on something. So I recommend you lay out an order of tasks of what you need to do. You stay organized. I do this for every project. In fact, we have one on for Ethereal. I constantly look at this list on the side. Even if it's the smallest items, I knock it off. And if while I'm working on something, or even if I'm not working on it, and I have an idea, I quickly go into this Google document and I add that note, and it gets added onto the list. When you're working, there should be a no-brainer, but you should remove distractions. That means put your phone to the side on silent. Don't have YouTube open, and don't have Discord. Maybe have a little bit of music playing in the background, but make sure it's something that doesn't give you sensory overload or something that you're going to be constantly checking. If you're still finding that you're feeling resistance to work on your project, go back to the basic thoughts. Why did you start this project in the first place? If you start kind of going back to the bare bones and understanding of why you created this, you can feel that passion coming back. It's also very important to practice overcoming self-doubt. You're your own toughest judge, and honestly, nobody's going to be as hard on you as you are on yourself. Keep in mind that no one succeeds on their first try, but that's okay. That's how we learn and grow. And as I just mentioned, passion is important. You're doing this project most likely as a passion. Passion sparks joy, and remember that joy when you're working on something. Your project you're working on, you don't even need to publish it. You don't need to put that pressure on yourself of thinking that somebody else is going to see it one day. Maybe that's what the long-term goal is, but don't put that pressure on yourself at the beginning. Just work on something for yourself, and then if it ends up being something that is a publicly available piece, great. But if not, you can finish it just for yourself. And finally, this is a big part about being your own tough judge, having self-doubt, imposter syndrome. Honestly, the project is probably going better than you realize. It's very easy when you're in the weeds and you've been working on something for year after year to not realize how good it is until you put it out there, or until you step back and take a look from 5,000 feet in the air. But honestly, what you're making right now is probably better than you realize it. Now, what about avoiding burnout though? How do you keep those flames going? First of all, it's very important to learn the difference between resistance and burnout. Resistance is your mind trying to convince you reasons not to work, whereas burnout is where you've worked on something for so much for so long that you don't really feel that passion for it. A great way to avoid burnout is using your real life moments as a reason to take a break from the project, instead of manifesting reasons. For example, with Ethereal, when we ended up moving into a new house, I took about a 3-month break from the project knowing that time needed to go towards focusing on moving. This also helped me take a break from my other project and put my attention where it needed to be. And then, when I came back, I was full of energy again to work on the project. Another way to avoid burnout is frequently change up what part of your project you're working on. Perhaps one day you start working on the bestiary, the next you start working on combat, and a couple days later you go back to the bestiary again. Or consider having a side project you tap into every so often. This project could be entirely different from what you're working on to stretch your creative legs. I, for one, am coding a game on the side and also write a book. Whenever I feel like Ethereal's starting to give me a little bit of burnout, I'll jump into one of those projects for a few days and then hop right back into Ethereal. You could also have a project that you use to learn more of your core project. So if you're working on a TTRPG, maybe go make a 1-pager TTRPG instead and just focus on some new dice mechanics that maybe you can pull over into your main project. Another great way to avoid burnout and also to keep your momentum going is joining communities of like-minded individuals to discuss your project and theirs. I, for one, found Tales from Elsewhere, hosted by Peter, linked to his YouTube in the description below, to be a great community to talk about his game, the community's games, and mine. By talking about the project on a regular basis, it gives me new inspiration and also encouragement to continue working on it as other people give you feedback. The biggest advice about burnout that I can give, though, is that if you feel real burnout coming on, not resistance, don't force your way through it. Take a short break, because if you do continue to push through a burnout, you're just going to burn out harder and it's going to take you more and more time to get back into the project. Recognize a burnout, take a deep breath, step back, give yourself a week, and then come back again. Finally, the last piece of advice I can give for momentum, burnout, and creative block is relax. This is a fun project. You're doing this as a hobby, you're doing this as a great time, you're doing this type of thing because you enjoy it. You do not need to kill yourself, you do not need to strain yourself over it. In fact, if you're ever feeling overwhelmed, try this simple breathing technique. Do 3 short breaths through your nose to fill your lungs with air. And then do 1 long exhale out through the mouth. What this technique does is it resets your brain in a way, and allows you to think a little bit more tactically and calmly about your situation. If you feel the need to, do it a couple of times over and over until you feel yourself starting to relax. I hope you found this video very useful, and I do hope that if you ever do experience creative block or loss of momentum, that you're able to reference it to find your way back on track. Creative block is not fun for anyone, but at the end of the day, it's not impossible to overcome. You just need to look at it from a different angle. Once again, I'm Ryan, and thanks for checking out this video.